Episode 121 of the Interpretation Station is called to order. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. How's everyone doing? It's been a couple of weeks, hasn't it? Geez, I've been a bit lazy the last couple of weeks. Haven't been putting up much stuff on the LinkedIn, any episodes. Okay, I haven't been lazy. It's been really busy. Okay, I've got to apologise. Lots of stuff happening for me in the last month. Like been hosting visitors, a couple of trips away. Went on a boys' weekend a couple of weekends ago. You see, I was away in Lisbon. Any Portuguese guys out there? How's everyone doing? And then family issues as well. And also at work, it's been a bit busy at work. Some minor political problem in some country called Ukraine. Don't know if you guys, have you heard anything about that? Anyway, okay, that's a joke, by the way. Right. Today we're going to get away. We're not talking about the Ukraine, okay? I thought we're going to find something a bit more cheerful. We're talking about COVID, yes. Well, in part to do with COVID. This is a statement we're going to be looking at. This is my Spanish viewers, by the way. And we're going to be looking at sort of more social themes, more vocabulary related to social topics, including, obviously, bloody COVID. It's a statement that was done a couple of weeks ago by Argentina. Hello to all the Argentinians out there. And it was from the 49th session of the Human Rights Council. It was a round table on public policy to hacer frente a los efectos negativos. I can't actually remember in English what the exact wording was, but I'm often, whenever they're talking about the negative effects these days of the pandemic, I tend to be trying to contain it, to contain the negative effects, negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and contribute to efforts at recovery, including best practices. Practical cases and best practices. So again, you should see this up on the screen. You know, it's the usual jazz. It's the usual beat. Anyway, so we're going to have a look at what the Argentinians said here, because as I say, there's some quite interesting vocab here that they use. And let's see what they had to say. Okay, so I'll just do it as a sight translation. I'll be stopping at the interesting bits and maybe using my little highlighter here. Okay, so thank you, Mr. President. Argentina is fully aware of the importance of the role of the state and of public policy, tanto en lo relativo, when it comes to the necessary efforts to hacer frente a la pandemia. So as I say, I've been saying a lot to contain the pandemic. I mean, you can just say to address the pandemic, to deal with the pandemic. But as I say, I'm doing a lot of containing these days. Okay, now this is interesting sentence. Como para encarar las tareas que hacen a la recuperación luego de ella. Now, I think I had this text before I was able to prepare it before the guy spoke, which obviously helps you out a lot, because then basically all he is saying here is, as well as to address the post-pandemic recovery. Okay, they always talk about la recuperación, the recovery. Maybe you could say as well as to ensure, as well as to move towards the recovery. Luego de ella, maybe thereafter. That sounds quite high register. Now, okay, so that's fine if you actually have the text in front of you, but let's say you don't have that text, so you don't know what's going to come at the end of the sentence. So you're probably going to be hearing that and say something along the lines of, as well as to encarar las tareas, okay, to address the tasks que hacen a la recuperación luego de ella. Maybe you'd say to address the tasks hacen a la recuperación, linked to the recovery luego de ella, thereafter. Okay, so again, you just have to think on your feet a little bit if you haven't got the text. You know, you have to just break it. Okay, you hear encarar las tareas, to deal with the tasks, to implement the tasks. Que hacen a la recuperación luego de ella, linked to the recovery thereafter, or linked to the recovery going forward, whatever, you know. So you have to just think of something that sort of sounds nice enough. In that respect, it's necessary, it's menester, it's necessary to bear in mind that what is and continues to be, so que fue y sigue siendo, so I think the best thing here is to just sort of throw in a what here. You don't know what the subject is yet. That what was and continues to be necessary is, so you throw in like an is in here, un abordaje integral. So a comprehensive approach. So for abordaje, I was going with an approach, comprehensive approach to address the various problems que la pandemia trajo aparejados, to address the various problems brought on by the pandemic, the various problems that the pandemic, okay, aparejados means, you know, to come hand in hand, that accompanied the pandemic, if you want to have a really close rendering, but you could also just say, also to address the various problems brought on by the pandemic, that the pandemic generated. With respect to healthcare policy, Argentina recogió la experiencia. So, you know, I mean, I would say on average that I hang back maybe 3 or 4 words from the original speaker. So I would have heard that, I think that recogió la experiencia. And there, you know, you just need to have a ready-made collocation with experience. Okay, so in English, for example, we talk about building on experiences or learning from experiences. So maybe we could say Argentina learnt from the experience of the H1N1 pandemic and the bird flu, la gripe aviar. Do you remember the old bird flu? What do we call it? The bird flu, the avian flu? I think you can say either. Together with advice from the scientific community, las sociedades científicas, I think here you could just say scientific community, and experts in the field of enfermedades transmisibles. I would say here communicable diseases. I think you could also, I think transmissible diseases you could say, but you really want the best, you know, the mot juste, or the phrase juste is a communicable diseases, okay, as opposed to non-communicable diseases. They talk about these quite a bit at the old UN, so, and more generally, you know. And we developed a plan de reparación y respuesta. You could maybe say, you know, a plan to a preparation and response plan for COVID-19. Okay. The plan was developed in 2 stages. The first stage of, now this was, I had to think about this a little bit, de contención. And I think this is just containment. It's really just to stop it from spreading, just from getting out of control. And I guess that the best English word there would be containment. Which contemplar, which included early detection, minimizing. Okay, here it probably would be transmission, minimizing the spread. You can maybe just say minimizing the spread, minimizing transition. You wouldn't say minimizing communication. Okay, that wouldn't sound right in this context. And preparing the health system. Then a second stage of mitigation with the goal of preventing serious cases and deaths. These intersectoral measures, or if you want something, for these cross-cutting, I like using cross-cutting as well. I think you can use either. These intersectoral measures help prepare and bolster the capacities for prevention, detection, and response of the sanitary of the healthcare system in coordination with all other jurisdictions. In 2020, año más acuciante de la pandemia. Now, I guess if you're going to do a literal rendering, that would end up being something like the harshest year of the pandemic, perhaps. But I think in English, I think I ended up saying just the worst year of the, for más acuciante, I said the worst year of the pandemic, with the pandemic in full flight, in full cry. But so long as you get the idea that 2020 is, as I say, the worst year, I really kept it simple, real Mr. Basic on that occasion. I just said that the worst year of the pandemic. The budget of the health ministry increased by 59.5%. Again, okay, por encima de los recursos presupuestarios asignados para 2019. I think I just kept it really simple. You know, I just said increased by 59.5% compared to that of 2019. Because he's really just repeating himself. He's, okay, if you're going literally, the budget of the healthcare ministry increased by 95% ahead of the budgetary resources assigned in 2019, which so it just means it's basically increased by 59.5% against 29 compared to 2019 against 2019. Y se realizaron transferencias monetarias, and monetary transfers were made to the provinces at a rate, por montos, at a level 6 times higher than those in 2019. Again, so there's a lot of stuff you can sort of edit here. A lot of sort of redundant words. Okay, if you look here, por encima, all this is really redundant. And the efectuados as well. The production ministry worked on bolstering the national production of insumos críticos. With insumos, I just go with critical inputs. I'm never quite certain. Yeah, I think the safest bet for insumos is just inputs. Logrando duplicar, managing to double the capacity for production of mechanical respirators y reconvirtiendo una parte de la industria textil. So for, okay, convert, I suppose the base, if you're just doing this on the fly, okay, converting part of the textile industry to produce personal protection equipment. But a word that I think is good is to repurpose, okay? To repurpose. You can repurpose a building, and I think you can repurpose an industry. So you'd say here, repurposing part of the textile industry to produce equipos de protección personal. I think I just said PPE, right? That's the acronym, isn't it? Personal protection equipment. Moreover, we are aware that the greatest impact of the economic crisis generated by the pandemic heightened at global level pre-existing inequalities. Afectó de forma desproporcionada, disproportionately affecting women, workers, informal workers, niños, niñas, just say children. That's sort of, you know, in Spanish they always sort of separate them. I think we just say children, adolescents, and the elderly, adultos mayores. I say the elderly. I've got a feeling some would consider it non-politically correct to say the elderly, but I don't know. Seems okay to me. It reminds me of my home. There used to be I always remember there was an old people's home. Well, we always used to call it an old folks' home, right? And it used to be called the home for the elderly. And then one day it changed. It was the home for older persons. Older persons. Older than what? I mean, than what? Older than who? Nonsense. Nonsense. Anyway, as a result, the national government implemented políticas económicas inéditas, unprecedented economic policies, such as ingreso. Now this gets very technical here. There's lots of Argentina specific names for various welfare payments and benefits. So unless you're an absolute expert on Argentina, you sort of have to ride by the seat of your pants here and just sort of make it up a little bit. But you know, an emergency family income. Maybe they often talk about transfers in this context when the government gives out money to certain segments of the population, and so you say emergency family benefit. Transfer. So then it explains prestación monetaria non contributiva excepcional. So like an exceptional non-contributive monetary prestación. I'd say maybe a transfer. Para quienes no perciben ningún ingreso, for those without any income during the aislamiento. I think we call it the confinement, right, rather than isolation. So those without income during the confinement. For workers in the informal economy. Personas desocupadas. For the unemployed. Now this again, trabajadoras de casas particulares monotributistas. So these are quite little specific things that you should certainly be familiar with. Like casa particulares is sort of these sort of hotels, hostels. I guess in Britain you'd call them bed and breakfasts. But anyway, basically it's domestic workers. Trabajadores de casas particulares. I think that is what they're getting at, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. If anyone has a better solution for that, please do put it in the comments as ever. But I think that's domestic workers. And monotributistas is again another interesting concept. And this is, I think, freelance workers. You know, people who are self-employed. They don't, you know, they just work for themselves. So again, here I would say either one of those. I say for freelancers or for self-employed individuals. But I think that's a concept, monotributista, that's very common in a lot of Spanish countries. I think it's not just Argentina. I think you'll run into that idea. Creación de la tarjeta alimentar, the creation of a food card. I guess this is like food stamps. Maybe in America they don't often have food stamps. But anyway, so here, yeah, just call it a food card. Asistencia de emergencia, emergency assistance for work and production. Doble indemnización. Don't really know what that is in the Argentinian context. I would probably just say double compensation, and then let the listener draw his own conclusions from that. Again, unless you're an absolute expert on Argentinian social policy, it's hard to know what else to do. Maybe double indemnity. Would maybe do to, if I was to say that sort of would be to do with insurance of some kind. So probably the safest bet to go in that sort of situation is you just use the most generic word, okay? Double compensation, and let the listener, as I say, draw his own conclusions. Prohibición de los despidos. Maybe you'd say a ban on despido is like a dismissal from work. Maybe a ban on job dismissals. But certainly know that despido is to do with when someone fires you or lets you go. But so I think that the idea is that companies weren't allowed to fire their employees during the period of the confinement. So maybe you can just sum that up as saying a ban on job dismissals. Ampliación de la asignación universal por hijo. So an expansion of the universal child benefit. That would be the first. Sometimes you just think, you know, what's the first thing, if you were telling this to your friend? This is a good technique, I always think. Well done, Brandon. Brandon always, if I do the Portuguese episodes with, so he still uses it, you know, he sort of told me about when he had in a situation like that, he likes to imagine what he'd say to his friend in the moment. And so I'd probably talk about, you know, child benefits. That's what we talk about in the UK. That's what we always got, the child benefits. I'd say expansion of the child benefit allowance, let's say, or the expansion of the universal child benefit. Programs for potenciar trabajo, I guess for job creation. Y el barrio cuida al barrio. Now this is obviously the name of a specific program, as I see it. El barrio cuida, there must be a program, el barrio cuida al barrio. Now maybe there are two approaches to this. And I think potenciar trabajar is also probably the name of a separate program. So the two approaches is you can sort of do them literally. Potenciar trabajo, empower work, boost work. Or the second one would be the neighborhood looks after the neighborhood. Or maybe you can even say the barrio looks after the barrio. Or the other way is to sort of paraphrase it a little bit. So what I did with potenciar was, you know, I just talk about, okay, that's obviously like a job creation program, I'm guessing. And this barrio cuida al barrio, it's like, sounds like some sort of neighborhood solidarity program. So you might, as I say, paraphrase it by saying programs for job creation and neighborhood solidarity. I think that sounds perhaps better. Sometimes when you get into literally rendering the names of these programs, it comes out sounding a bit stupid. But anyway, I think both approaches are okay. Just bear in mind that you can approach it either way, I think. Bolstering social protection for protecting the sectors in from suffering from the highest vulnerability, or to protect the most vulnerable sectors. You really just drop this. You know, if you were giving the speaker enough room, this situation, you could probably drop just the most vulnerable sectors, the sectors suffering most vulnerability. These policies not only represent a fiscal effort equivalent to 6.6% of GDP, baby, GDP, but are also major aprendizajes, they're major lessons that there is a need to continue promoting with strategies to address both the emergency to do with the pandemic, as well as cuestiones estructurales de largo plazo, so long-term structural issues. Finally, with respect to mental health policy, Argentina has bolstered its national strategies during the pandemic. It has improved coordination mechanisms for mental health and psychosocial support in emergencies. Argentina is aware of the alarming aumento alarmante, maybe the alarming spike. I like saying spike. Some people say to me that spike is too low a register. Maybe. I think in the moment, if you're just sort of without text, you come up with a spike. It seems it gets across, I think, that idea well, that something's suddenly shot up very fast. You can just say maybe the alarming increase. And the exacerbation, agravamiento, the exacerbation de estos padecimientos durante la pandemia. I mean, the padecimiento is to do with suffering. It would again be the literal translation of that word. I'm just thinking that in English it wouldn't quite sound the exacerbation of such sufferings. I think in English we'd probably just say, we'd keep it more neutral. We say an aggravation, a worsening, an exacerbation of such pretty just conditions. All right, so again, you just have to make the call in the moment. Do you go for the absolute literal rendering of the word, or do you try and go for the word that sounds most natural in English again? So it's a choice, you know, you can go either way. But I think I like to try and stay on the side of making it nice in English, to be honest. So I would probably say an exacerbation of such conditions during the pandemic. That is why we have bolstered our strategy based on here we go, transversal, cross-cutting, intersectoral and community abordaje approach again. So cross-cutting approach, I thank you. So there you have it. So there's some interesting, as I say, social vocabulary here. As I say, it's good to get away from these days always talking about war. I mean, our meetings, and they're not all just about war. There's more sort of nuts and bolts sort of stuff that we do. And so for me, it was really interesting, some of these words, like this monotributista, casas particulares, very important, reconvertiendo we talked about, insumos, inputs, despidos. These are very important ideas that get raised in many different contexts. So if you've got any, as ever, please do put comments if there's anything you've liked, if there's any particular solutions that I have given you that you have liked. That's what I like to hear, okay? Tell me those. And also suggestions of your own, if there are any of you guys from Argentina that have a bit more of an in-depth knowledge of some of these concepts that we talked about, especially in this paragraph, some of these welfare mechanisms and payments, please do, as I say, comment, shed some light for us, the viewers, and that's pretty much it. So guys, if you've enjoyed the episode, please do click the like button, share it with your friends as ever, subscribe, keep subscribing, get me up now, going for 1,300 is now looming slightly ahead, so come on, help me get up there. And now that hopefully work might be a little bit lighter, I think the Human Rights Council is ending. It either has ended or it's ending this week. So that hopefully will make things a bit more. That might give me a little bit more spare time, a little bit less stress, give me time to make more episodes. So So hopefully I'll get back to the old rhythm of sort of 1 or 2 a week, and I'll keep trying to put stuff up on the LinkedIn as well. So anyway, with that, it's been a pleasure as ever, and I'll see you again very soon. As ever, you can find the links to the transcript in the description box below. Together with, I'll also find the link to the audio so that you can maybe practice the text first, and then you can come and watch the episode. That's the interpretation station recipe. Usually, you know, record yourself and then come and compare what you did with what the interpretation says. Okay, so with that, guys, all that remains to be said is that episode 121 of the interpretation station stands adjourned.
The train is now leaving the interpretation station. We hope you enjoyed your visit. Until next time, folks.